Okay, calm down.
Well, let's go to our first guest who we have here on, who I think may be in Michigan herself right now, the Green Party presidential candidate, Dr. Jill Stein. Jill, as always, thanks for joining us.
It's really great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me on. Yes, I'm in ground zero for the political rebellion right now, and it's really awesome to be here in Dearborn.
Right on. Well, and you say that is exactly where I want to open. You've been running this campaign for a number of months now. I mean, what are you hearing from people on the campaign trail? What is missing in the two-party system that you think is attracting people to your campaign and other third parties?
Oh man, I mean, we're hearing just a torrent of misery from the American people, and from the Muslim American community, of course. This is about their relatives. I've never been in a campaign, and I've run a lot of them. This is my third presidential run, but I've run other campaigns too. And I've never had a campaign where people are running up to me in public, complete strangers, who are bursting out into tears and hugging me because they are so grateful to be heard and to be defended and and to have some measure of advocacy for their relatives who are being killed, who are being absolutely slaughtered. So there's that on one hand, and then on the other, it's people who are struggling to keep a roof over their heads, who are paying 50% or more of their income, just to deal with the skyrocketing rents, who do not have health care. People who cannot afford their medicine for diabetes and they don't have access to Medicare or anything, who are swamped in student debt, who are just utterly depressed and hopeless about the future, and who are just sick to death of this political system, which is, bought and paid for by AIPAC and the war machine and Wall Street and all that. So, yeah, I mean, I hear no end of people suffering. And, this is why the Democrats have worked so hard to throw us off the ballot, hired their army of lawyers. We just learned like 2 days ago, an expose in Time magazine, that the Democrats are spending the equivalent of our entire budget. They are spending a 7-figure budget. They have 30 employees purely for the purpose of smearing third parties, and in particular our campaign, who they regard as their biggest threat. So it's like that's what they're doing, is just trying to silence their competition instead of addressing why it is that people are walking away from them, why it is that voters, Kamala Harris is so worried about swing states. Well, she could win those votes back if she simply agreed to a weapons embargo, but she won't. She would rather just smear her opposition. The fact that we have survived that and we've come out stronger than we've ever been before, with a real alliance with the Muslim American community, many in the African Americans, students, Hispanics, so many who are standing up to support our campaign now. We're emerging stronger than we have ever been, in spite of the Democrats' very concerted effort to fear campaign and smear campaign and blame and shame voters. We're going really strong. And when they launch their fear campaigns, they're ridiculed. They're absolutely ridiculed. AOC or Jamie Harrison, Angela Rye on the Breakfast Club. They're absolutely ridiculed by their pathetic rerun of the same old smears. So they're in pretty desperate straits right now, and I think this is really a time for us lefties to be getting together and looking at how we can build solidarity coming out of this, and use all the power out there. This is the perfect storm, and it's going to keep getting more perfect, unfortunately, because billionaires have doubled their wealth and child poverty has tripled. And that's kind of like a sign of the times and where we are. So it's a really great time for us to be standing up and fighting for a political power right now.
Absolutely.
is I'm sure you get asked this all the time in a really disingenuous way, but the Democrats will say if they lose tonight to Trump or tomorrow, whenever we find out results, they're going to turn around. We know what they're going to do. They're going to turn around and they'll say, well, Jill Stein, the Green Party, refused to get out of the way, and therefore this is their fault. So I want to give you the opportunity to respond to what I think is a very entitled, anti-democratic position to have. Nonetheless, we hear it repeated not just by Democratic politicians and their leadership, but also by the corporate media apparatus. So what is your response to that talking point?
What can I say? We've been through this many times before, so many times that I think it begins to lose traction. And all the fear campaigning that's going on around this, I think loses traction. In fact, let me say, I've heard from Hispanics who've discovered our campaign and who come running to our events, and then say they are so excited to hear that they have this option that actually treats immigrants with respect and with dignity, and would basically offer a pathway to citizenship for everybody, and that treats the migration problem. The most important solution is to stop causing the migration crisis in the first place. So Hispanics are like overjoyed to hear about this, and this young woman was then saying, well, I'm going to go back and tell all my friends because they're all voting for Trump. I said, well, why are they voting for Trump? To which she says, they're voting for Trump because it's Biden who has actually been deporting all the Hispanics in the same way that it was Obama was the previous deporter in chief. So, the smear campaigns are just not getting traction. And likewise, Angela Ray, who went completely ballistic on breaking points and was, just throwing all those smear campaigns against us, to look at what did the viewers think. Well, the viewers thought it was totally pathetic, that it was just an assault on basic democracy, and that they were going to go out and vote for our campaign now, having intended not to vote at all. So I'd say the smears backfire. If you want to know, like, what is our response, because this is like the only question that mainstream media asks us. And so what we say is that this is self-serving propaganda. People shouldn't listen to it for a minute. You own your vote. The politicians who tell you that they own your vote, they don't even deserve consideration of your vote if that's their attitude. They have to earn your vote. If they haven't, then, just forget them. So there are so many answers to this. It's just pure BS, and their intention is to just silence voters and to fear campaign and smear campaign. They could address the crisis here based on which people are walking away, but they don't actually address the material conditions of people's lives. They could implement a weapons embargo right now, and Kamala Harris would probably do very well in the swing states if she did that, but she doesn't want to do that. She would rather lose the election than end the genocide and her service to Bibi Netanyahu. So they could fix this. They could speak to a $25 an hour minimum wage. They could implement rent control across the country and actually build social housing. We call for 15 million units. There are just, these problems are solvable. The problems are not the problem. The problem is that our political system is predatory. This is end-stage capitalism and end-stage oligarchy. It has no intention of meeting your needs. So its days are over, which is why it has to silence its competition, because it actually cannot compete in the realm of ideas and policy and solutions.
Well, Joe, let me ask you this last 4 or 5 minutes we have with you here. I think a big issue in the election is the time scale of terrible things that could happen. We saw what happened with Hurricane Helene. We saw what happened with Hurricane Milton. I mean, how important is it that we make a serious course correction on climate change, which is not something being talked about by the two major parties?
Exactly. In fact, Kamala Harris is bragging about how she, opened the floodgates to more fracking by being the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is supposed to be a climate bill. It's not a climate bill. It's a total fossil fuels bill. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. And, when you talk about the timeline, these dramatic, powerful hurricanes are not only super powered, they're also super fast, and they develop, in the blink of an eye. The worst hurricane on record took place the year before in Acapulco, Mexico, where it went from a non-entity, it was not even like a recognized storm, to a Category 5 hurricane in the course of 5 days. I'm sorry, in the course of one day, in the course of 24 hours, it went to the most extreme category of hurricane. That's where we are now, where we will not even be able to evacuate when the hurricanes are coming. And we did not have money even to sponsor FEMA to do the rescues, which still need to be done in Western North Carolina. The money's not there for FEMA. This $8 billion they were short. They were instead giving to Israel in order to reward Israel for having expanded the war now into the West Bank and into Lebanon. And we're on the verge. I mean, talk about scary things here, not only on climate, but also we're on the verge of being dragged into a major war with Iran, which has been Netanyahu's goal here for a long time. And we just sent some B-52 bombers and other aircraft. We've had 2 aircraft carrier battle groups, one stationed off of Iran, another stationed off of the west coast of Gaza. We have boots on the ground, not only 40,000 soldiers in the Middle East, but also, these 5,000 soldiers with each of these battleship groups, and 100 going in to provide this missile defense. And the Biden-Harris White House has promised boots on the ground if they're needed. The draft is back. People are being registered for the draft. If you're between the ages of 18 and 25 and you're a male, you are being signed up for the draft without your permission and without your knowledge. AI is doing that. And all that has to happen is for Joe Biden to say, okay, they need us now. And if there's a full-scale war with Iran, Israel can't fight that war. Israel is trying to draft the religious Orthodox Jews right now, and they're not coming. They are not. They are not a part of this, and they could decide, oh, we really need your help now, America. So America could be paying in blood sooner than than you could possibly imagine. Which is why this election is so critical, not only to end the genocide, but to prevent World War III, to prevent the draft, to prevent the climate crisis, which is, it's not only the storms, it's the Colorado River, which is running dry, which means we don't have the fruits and vegetables for half the nation coming from California. So there are just 1,000 ways that we're in a meltdown right now, and it's not even being discussed. This is why we have to build an alternative politics, not only in this election, but coming out of this election. And on that score, I feel like we have won. We've won because we're
Jill, I've got
emerging
Katie
more
Halper
powerfully
here
than ever.
with me who wants to break in and ask you a question. Katie, go ahead.
Great.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. Hi, Dr. Stein. I wanted to know, you mentioned that Kamala Harris could easily gain popular support with an arms embargo. So what's stopping her? Why isn't she doing that?
Yeah, I think she's a wholly owned subsidiary, or shall we say fully owned subsidiary of corporate America, of APAC, does Kamala Harris think for herself? I mean, it'd be really hard to believe that. Kamala Harris seems to be an empty suit who basically, puts her finger in the air. And she's hearing from a lot of Zionists and her big donors. She has more billionaire donors than any other campaign on record. She's been raising money hand over fist. So it's just not conceivable that she is not seeking to fulfill her obligation as a big fundraiser. That seems to be about as far as her brain will stretch. So it's just hard to imagine her not standing up. She called for the most lethal army in the history of the world. This is where she measures success. This is what she understands as the power that she is acquiring. So it's absolutely terrifying for an empty suit like Kamala Harris to be in the White House. And when people ask me, and they're really trying today to get me to commit, to which candidate is the greater evil, to which I have to say I'm terrified of both of them. And they both give us reason to build as fast as we possibly can to create a political alternative. And I think we need to do like France which is to bring together the parties of the left and find ways that we can collaborate, which we've done a little bit in this race, but we need to do much more. I think it's time for that. And when we do that, we totally pull the rug out from under the the right wing. And there's nothing, when people say, well, the Democrats are the solution to the right wing extremists. No, they're not at all. They're a major driver of right wing extremism. Democrats fund the most extremist Republicans in the primaries. They spent over $50 million doing that in the last midterms. And they fund extremist candidates that they think will be easiest to beat in the general. Usually that's true, but in the process, they have basically given new political life to really radical right-wing Republicans. And the Democrats' agenda of austerity, privatization, big tax giveaways to the wealthy, and endless war, that is what creates the incredible economic insecurity and misery, which is really driving driving the electorate to the right. Economic insecurity, really is the driving force of fascism and right wing extremism. So,
Indeed.
you know,
Well, Dr. Jill Stein, as always, it was great to have you with us. It looks like you got a very exciting watch party yourself there behind you. Wish you good luck this evening, and thanks again for joining us here on Breakthrough News.
great to be with you, and talk to you again soon. Thanks so much. Take care.